Hi, I'm Paul Bowman, CEO at Wexer, the digital fitness specialist who deliver over 25 million fitness experiences for our partners worldwide. Welcome to the Wexer podcast, where we'll be speaking to industry experts to bring you insights and advice to support your business journeys. In today's episode, backed by popular demand, I'll be chatting to my good friend, colleague, everything, mentor, Bryan O'Rourke. Bryan, how are you?
Paul, how you doing, man? How are things down in Kiwi land?
We're trying to live the dream. You know, summer's coming. Summer's coming, but it's just raining completely. so maybe it's a little delayed summer, but we're looking forward to it. And then today we're going to be talking all about the Wexer digital trend report and diving into a little bit more detail. So, you ready for this, Bryan? I got some questions.
And I love your trend reports that you do, and I think there's some interesting stuff in this one, and everyone's going to be able to read it in the coming days. So when it will be released, so please check it out. So where do you want to start on the trend report?
I think we start with trust. You know what I mean? I think we talk about digital trust. You know, like the report came out with, 60% of people are questioning authenticity of online content. And how do you see the industry combating that challenge, and particularly around digital fitness, of course?
Yeah. Well, it's a good question. And it's interesting when you talk about technology, right? Because of all the things it does, but then there are consequences from it. And people are just becoming more aware, like Gary Vaynerchuk likes to say, humans have tremendous bullshit meters. And so, it's just true, right? So, it's in our reptilian brains, where we're trying to survive. People are skeptics because when they get manipulated, they start anticipating being manipulated, and so that's where the trust issue really comes in too. And obviously building trust is a thing that takes some time. If you lose it, it's impossible to earn back. But what you don't want to do is you don't want to put non-credible content out. You don't want it to be shady. You want it to have quality. You want to have brands that have trust, that people can relate to, and that's important because in the day of AI, as you know now, there's just a fire hose of information now, whether it's articles, videos, and so there's so much. People are going to be really seeking what is authentic, and if you're delivering that, then you're not going to suffer as much, right?
And we're seeing it as well. You also get to see that, when club groups in particular have got their instructors, their local stars, they win every single time. That's how you drive usage. It's so clear cut now. And I actually think the world of AI and all the content stuff, that's people just want that relationship, even though that person, you might be able to see that person Friday at 9 a.m. and maybe you can't book into that class, but you can see that person. You'll still build a relationship because you get to understand that personality, right? That's us. Even though people, they know us, but we haven't actually even spoken to them. So, but then, of course, the buzzword around all the circuits at the moment is hyper-personalization. And that kind of, that's the other side of the coin, right? One time we're talking about if it's engagement, it's local stars. The other side is, of course, hyper-personalization. How you do it at scale is very much AI and generated. So, talk to me about it. I'm just going to try and keep that conversation open. How do you see this impact the industry, maybe?
Yeah, well, I think people are going to expect it. I mean, if they're coming to any product or service business, you have to offer them what matches their needs. Now, to what degree hyper-personalization can be really hyper-personalized versus broader, I mean, that's subject to some conversation. But I could tell you, and I think you'd agree, that when it comes to content or any experience, if you have somebody that wants to use a reformer in a club and they don't have a Pilates, they're not going to be interested. So, I think it's aligning the programming and experiences and service offerings with the different cohorts that are looking for what they're looking for. And I think it takes different forms, whether it's eGym's recent deal, the Genius front end that's a partner of Core's, or others. There's different scale, but I could say in general, when it comes to content, right, if you don't have the fundamental bundles that are appealing to the membership base, then if it's not personal at all, you know, a lot of experiences in the space, wherever you go, there's very little personalization, honestly. You know, it's, you know, it's very, you know, the most successful or the largest chains out there, they're not doing much personalization at all. So, you know, I think the people seek it, and you need to consider how are you going to deliver it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And well, and this flows nicely to my thing is, you know, we brought up in the trend report the impatient economy. I quite like that thing.
Yeah.
So, and I guess it goes with hyper personalization, but goes against authenticity sometimes, right? So, you know, like what would be your advice to the, you know, club operators and people listening to be able to engage with, you know, the new generation of this impatient economy? And it isn't just a generational thing, right? It's literally right up until 65 years of age, people are becoming way more impatient in terms of their service offering.
That's right. And it's little things that you know about. I mean, in essence, I mean, think about what happens today on websites. And when you even look at apps, because Wexer's done a lot of work in apps. You know, a lot of people say, well, I have an app, but then you look at the user experience of the app, and it's all these steps you have to go through to find what you want. And people just aren't tolerating that anymore. It's a website. I got to click this, click that, give me who you are, and all this other stuff. They just want what they want. Right. And the thing about it is, for many of these businesses, not just in the fitness space, there is simply an inadequate amount of time being spent on touch points and designing the user experience. And so oftentimes, particularly when you talk about technology too often, and the great companies get it right, and there aren't a lot of those, where instead of having engineers or programmers define UX, you need to have, you know, you need to have real people with insights as to what is really relevant to the user. And it's shocking to me how few people do that. You know, it's, and then you look at digital, for example, as well, when you think about the design of experience. And how you integrate the digital components into doing all those things in a very thoughtful way that makes it easy for the user. And the people that do it well, you can tell they do it well. I mean, it's their live class experience and their digital class experience becomes much more similar and aligned.
And we've seen it, you know, especially probably in the last 5 years, where, so, you know, if people that have the app technology and are pushing workouts based off the QR code scanning in, 60% of those workouts will get viewed. You know what I mean? It's such an easy thing. It's scan QR code. You know where they are. You know the gym's location, what the gym has. Straight away, there's a workout. And most of the time, they will at least open it for inspiration or do it. And it's exactly the same with the on-demand players in the clubs. It's about 60% is all the front screen. So even though there's a scheduled class, if someone walks up to it, they're going to push the top 10 classes. And we know that. And that's why we always give content partners the same amount of, you know, spread, because we know it can be affected. But from a club operator point of view, it's a no-brainer for all your tech stack. You know, they just want what's your hero classes that is going to give them value straight away. And the problem that they're going to be solved is give me a workout that I can follow. You know what I mean? It's such a simple way to engage the customer base, right?
That's right. That's right.
Enough plugging your Wexer. Sorry, I'm going. I have to, but it's just something I find so simple that can be implemented into every club. So, but again, but talking about community as well, in terms of, you know, you're giving them a sense of connection and belonging in digital fitness and in virtual fitness. I think that's one of the big challenges we feel with a lot of the senior management teams is how do you create the community? You know, they describe themselves as community-based hubs, and then they feel like online's a little bit disassociated to that. I don't disagree, but I'd love your thoughts.
Well, it means that, you know, as we were talking about, what's essentially happening with all these trends is the pendulum swung very hard to digital. And it doesn't mean that digital isn't highly relevant. It is. But to have it on an island without incorporating appropriately the human dimensions of experience, you're losing your advantage, because just go ahead and get Apple Fitness then, or go get Daily Burn or whatever. But in this case as well, it's design of user experience as well. I mean, yes, they're community, but just having a place and offering workouts doesn't necessarily do the trick. You have to do more than that to build those communities, and how you design your classes, what kind of personnel you have on the fitness floor, how are you training them? Are you acknowledging people? How do you do it? And there's a lot of tools around that. And what's particularly challenging on the community front right now is just the battle for labor is getting harder. So, the deliberate and this is a challenge with a lot of group programming right now globally, where a lot of chains are cutting that out or reducing it for
Huge.
economic reasons, right? But that doesn't mean you can't thread the needle on integrating digital with community in a way that optimizes what you're offering, that meets some of these criteria in a more effective way. So, I think the brands that figure out how to do that are going to have a strategic advantage.
Yeah, Matt's actually at some sites today. He was with Invited, one of our business development colleagues, and he was saying that there's actually a community that go to these like stock standard classes, the 9:30 classes, and do virtual classes. So they've actually created their own community, and their thing is not that they're against the instructor; they just like doing it as a group of friends, and they can have a natter. They don't have to be silent the whole time and respect the coach. They can do these things, and I'm like, that's just an interesting use case that there's communities that come off it just quite naturally. No, nice.
Absolutely.
And then, again, buzzword, but it come up in the reports we've got to address is the AI and personalization. So kind of talked about it with the hyper personalization stuff, but what are you seeing as the good use cases right now? You talked about eGyms, Genesis,
Genius,
which is great. What other examples are you seeing?
Well, with the company we just sold, Vertimax, we used AI to do form on how do people form their jumps on certain systems using, a Sensei's technology as an example. Yes. And there's going to be more. However, I would caution right now, because I'm old enough to say, AI is definitely in a hype cycle. Okay. It is powerful. It can do a lot of things, but the other stuff we talked about when it comes to human skepticism and concerns about authenticity and what's real and what's not, I would say that yes, there are things that can be done. Yes, there are things that are going on, but don't put the cart before the horse, because there's still a ways to go there. And to the extent some people think it's the cool thing, like a lot of technologies, it comes down to how do you integrate this stuff into a user experience that makes sense? Because you can bring these tools to play, but people may not like them. They may be very uncomfortable. You really don't know till it's in the wild and you use it and you really try to figure it out, because some people are going to be put off by it. Some people are going to be very put off by it. So it's a balancing act. I think those tools, as we mentioned, a couple of them, they're emerging, and we're working on some of those ourselves, as you know. But you got to be careful, because part of these trends that are addressed in the report are about that pendulum. You don't want it to go too far, because you're going to be, putting yourself in a corner potentially.
Yeah, great. And do you think from a supply point of view, when we look at technology, and you've seen so many different technologies come into the space, are we building technologies enough that integrate into the physical, supporting the physical with digital as a component, rather than just building digital and trying to think that can hold its own weight? Like, do you think there needs to be more focus in that thinking?
Well, like anything, that it's what problem you're trying to solve. And then, and it's about identifying what the opportunities are and what those problems are. So with, you look at like an app like Cover Me, which is going on for replacing instructors and creating an Uberish type of solution, because labor is such a challenge in offering group right now around the world. So that's a solution that's addressing a problem. Will it work? Maybe not, but it's, I find in my experience, the more aligned the effort is, whether you're using technology or other components of operating your company, the more aligned you are with what problem are you trying to solve. The technology is more clearly thought of as a tool to solve. Sometimes the tail can wag the dog on tech, and especially, in no disrespect, my father was an engineer, my son's an engineer, my brother's an engineer. We love engineers. We need engineers. Engineers solve world problems. But you can't have the tail wag the dog. You can't have what technology is cool to do it, to be cool, when you're maybe doing things that really don't solve the best problems. And that's just learning. Yeah.
Features don't solve business problems, right?
Yeah,
but
it's
very easy to get into that world, as we've discussed many times, Bryan.
That's right. It's just so true, right? And I think that's what separates people that actually operate their businesses better in the long run than folks who have more struggles. Because if you keep, it's the hedgehog and the fox from the Collins book kind of thing, and if you understand what you're really good at and what you need opportunities to make you great at what you do, solving problems becomes more and more obvious that's where you need to spend your energy, and you use tools accordingly.
And I think you've just answered this, but my next question was sustaining engagement. What are you seeing as the best way to keep them motivated, engaged on digital platforms? But it's solving their problems, right?
Yeah, it's solving their problems. And the other thing is now, as mentioned earlier, with people's skepticism about content, et cetera, as you know, and you can see, because we, in our marketing firms and everything, we see engagement. And what's happening is there's a numbification going on. And because there's just a fire hose of stuff, and we can see. And then also you have an realm of engagement from a digital perspective. I mean, for crying out loud, Google has changed the whole way SEO is working just in the last couple months. And so we're already seeing the way you engage people digitally is changing. And I think quality over quantity is going to become more and more evident. Now, will the monopolistic platforms, how will they use that to their advantage versus how businesses do what they do? And I think that what's going to be interesting to look at when you think about engagement is some old school stuff is going to probably reemerge. It's like, for example, television at some point might become a more interesting medium to advertise on than it used to be. There's so many dynamics because it's going to be about what people know and trust. And then obviously from a demographic and generational perspective, that also changes, because what a 15-year-old might see in the way of engagement and what a 50-year-old might see in a way of engagement might be very, very different. And so I think it's going to be a challenge. But at the bottom line, if you're doing user experience well and you design that kind of chasm well, the potential for friction around that's going to go down. So if you're being authentic, if you're addressing experience, if you're personalizing, if you're doing these things, the opportunity to retain and do better and to create the community is going to go up.
And what would be your advice? You've managed so many big businesses and change curves. Like one of the biggest, I think a lot of people from a technology point of view when dealing with physical locations is how do you get the team involved? But not even the senior team. It's usually the people that are actually creating the content, the people that are actually on the ground, doing this. Like what would be your advice to senior teams getting the individual, if it's the content creators, if it's the people managing it, if it's the marketing people, getting them bought in? Because we feel there's just if you put it on a bell curve, there's some clubs that are just doing amazing, the Smart Fits of the world, and then others that are struggling to actually get that engaged, probably because of the lack of buy-in.
Yeah, that's a big question, Paul. I mean, we tell you it's hard. It's a big question. I think in the basis of it, it comes down to the real values, not the stated values, the real values of behaviors of senior leaders in the business. And that's one thing, because how you act is really, and how you behave. Leadership is about being. Management is about doing, and being means how are you with people? What do you display? How do you react? These kind of things. And what are your true values? Not that you say, you're authentic. And a big part of that is, things like being vulnerable, things like demonstrating true empathy, and teaching your team to listen and understand. That's the hard, soft skill component of, operating with a leader's heart. We in our management team right now, we read books together. So it's high road leadership or other things to try to get people to think. That's one big component of it. But another one is you have to have a business model that works. So and that's easily said, especially if you're going through transformation, because the train may have left the station. And so the amount of heavy lifting, and every business has a certain life cycle to it. And so having sold businesses, bought businesses, gone through that cycle many times, you need to have a business that has an addressable market with a product that is sustainable in its profitability, that is reaching a need that's growing. And in fitness, we have that, but we also still have a lot of people deploying, in my opinion, very ineffective operating approaches. And then they wonder why things aren't working. So if you get the soul of the organization right, you get the right people involved, you create the right culture. That's one thing. Then you need to create the right business around the customer. And and that some businesses, that's a hard slog. In others, it's a tweak. And so those are the keys, but it's easy to say that, it's hard to do.
It's good advice. It's very, very good advice, though. And then, of course, I've got to dive into content in terms of getting your opinion. Defining content quality. I guess the variety is huge when it comes to either fitness operators in terms of creating their own or using platforms like Wexer. What for you is crucial when it comes to content quality for member engagement?
Well, so first off, it has to be credible. It's not just about the lighting and the filming and all that other stuff. That's a component of it. And it can be, and certain people are different. But in the end, and you're seeing this now, the podcast has become an incredible distribution channel. In fact, a lot of the thinking around the presidential elections in the United States and what happened was that it became the podcast era. Yeah. And so when you're thinking about content, and here I produce a content blog like you do and a video thing, and I get thousands of downloads a month for that. So one of the things about quality content, it kind of relates to what's quality. So if it's super personalized to a niche that are people that really want to learn, and you can educate them, teach them about their little world, that by itself is seen as quality, which is why you see podcasts proliferating in their availability. It's relevance, right? Quality is relevance. So, but it takes many, we could talk about a lot of different aspects. You know what I mean? Yeah,
you are backed by popular demand, so there's probably going to be
right. Yeah, like me, I collect timepieces. So there are a couple of people on YouTube that they don't have big production costs, but they're highly credible people. And I know when I'm watching a guy talking about Vacheron versus Patek or Rolex or what have you, and they really know what they're talking about, and you're learning a lot, and that helps you either appreciate the piece more, understand how to buy at a cheaper price, or what you need to do to maintain it. I don't care nearly as much about the makeup or the lighting or the music as I do the veracity and the relevance of the information, and then using it and relying on it, and hey, this works. So quality, it has a number of metrics, but I think based on the other aspects of trends that the report covers, authenticity, personalized, they don't think it's fake. There's a community component to it. There are all these components those all go into the quality metric.
Yeah, nicely said. And then last question from me, because I know your time is precious. Future growth. So I guess what excites you the most about the digital fitness world that we're heading into, and user behavior. What's the one thing that's making you go, come on, this is going to be exciting?
Well, there's a couple things. Number one is the greatest business model for fitness in the world has not been invented yet.
I like that.
Somewhere in the world are some people that are thinking about it, and they're going to do something no one expected. Because it's one thing to look at trends, right? I like to write trend reports, and you like to talk about trends, and that's great, right? And we love it too, and we see, we play, and we try to figure it out. But it's the people that figure out how to operationalize it in ways that had not been considered. That's what I'm excited about, because I know it's coming. I just can't wait to see it. And we've seen it before, different business models. I mean, the low price models have come out and, proliferated. We went through the micro gym boutique period, and they proliferated. We've gone through the digital play, and it's proliferated. Now, what's next? Integration, wellness, recovery, all these other things. Well, when are those going to be operationalized, and how? And then medical integration and personalization around that, and all these different things that we look at, and we see spots of them emerging here and there. But as far as really launching a brand that is going to really revolutionize the space, because as you know, when you go through S-curve reinvention, that's what it takes. You have to have somebody that's an innovator that actually does it and demonstrates. That's right. And they demonstrate the efficacy of it and the veracity of it, and they do it. And then guess what happens? Other people come in and follow and try to take what they learn. So that's what excites me. I expect to see some things. Yeah.
Yeah, look, you know, I don't want to have an opinion piece on Sam Altman, but like I was listening to him in terms of, you know, because it's what he's done and how quickly he's grown, and he was talking about the fact of my biggest challenge in OpenAI is creating an organization where we break everything and start again constantly.
Yeah.
And because you know the human spirit is you want some consistency, you want the processes, you want to, but actually creating an organization. And he was talking about a few industries and that actually haven't reinvented themselves for years and years and years because no one's tried to break the model and trying to start again because of the risk, because of the capital, all the rest of it. But you know, like, do we have enough people? And I think we do in the industry. Do we have enough people that are trying to break the model to recreate the new model? I believe I'm an optimist. What's your thoughts?
Well, first off, you know, kudos to Sam. I think Sam's a serious outlier, and he might be right. But if I had $7 billion in the bank, I could opine about that stuff too and sound like a smart guy. You know, and so nothing against Sam, but you know, but what he does when he says this is it's good for him to say that because he has so much money. He's in such a high growth curve. He's in a and he's got he's got the backing, everything. So it's easy to be you know, to have those views. And I'm not saying they're wrong per se, but I think it's very challenging to break things all the time in bread and butter businesses because you know, you can only do that so much. It kind of relates to the ideology of you got to have a sustainable business model. Well, ChatGPT today is not a sustainable business model, but he's got all this money in the bank. So you know, that's a different view. And I'm not arguing with it. So, but I'd be very wary of, and you know, the major constraint for Sam and AI is what, you know, right?
What?
It's power. It's compute. It's power.
Yeah.
That's why Microsoft's that's why Microsoft's buying 3 Mile Island to re-up it to make enough power to juice these server systems.
Yes.
So there's a lot yet to play out on these things. So you know, be very careful. Anybody should be very careful in taking those insights. You should take those insights, right? But be careful in taking those insights sometimes and applying it to your world because those worlds aren't aligned. But
and
different
landscape where he has to stay above the competition because as soon as one, you know, Gemini comes out and it's so much better, everyone moves over. The switching costs are so easy, or the rest of it. Where you know, from a fitness operator equipment point of view, you know, we're still a location-based business at its point. Yeah, so I understand. So yeah, great insight, Bryan. As always, I like talking about a trend report. But how do people connect with you? Everyone knows you anyway.
You get on. Oh no, Bryan K. O'Rourke. And by the way, I love the trend report. I can't wait to. In fact, some of those trends I'm going to touch on in my upcoming Cybec webinar I'm going to be doing in early December. And because I love it so much, and I'll be sharing other pieces of that in other speeches next year. So I'll take a little bit of your insights and apply them for the world to think about.
Bryan, as always, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your time.
Keep doing great things, Paul. Appreciate you having me on.